So it's my honor to welcome Professor Graham Foster, who will be talking about hepatitis C virus elimination, global and regional perspective. Graham?
Thank you very much, Asad. It's always a pleasure to come to Pakistan, and Lahore is one of my favorite cities, so I'm very grateful to you for inviting me once again. My apologies to those from Karachi, but I do like Lahore. We've heard an awful lot about elimination. We've heard about the word. This is where the rubber hits the road. I want to talk about where we are. What do the numbers look like? And then I want to shift from the numbers to what I think is most important, which are the patients. And what are the benefits of failing to reach elimination? Because I think we need to consider the possibility of failure. And then I'll talk a little about the challenges that you face here in Pakistan. So how are we doing? Well, we've got some targets. We've got some very specific targets. I just want to put a little plug for hepatitis B. We've just had a wonderful session on the importance of hepatitis B, but I think we do rather forget about the elimination of hepatitis B, but it's here and it's just as important as hepatitis C. But for now, we're going to focus on C. And the WHO are very clear, very specific targets, and I can tell you they're not budging. They're sticking with the numbers. If you don't hit the numbers, you won't get the little badge. And they insist that we prevent new infections. We're going to talk a lot about treatment. We're going to talk about drugs, and we all think about treating our patients, and that's what we're here to do. But let me put a plea, please, for the simple things. Let's cut our needles in half. Because the simple things that we do to stop this virus being passed on are going to have every bit as much impact as the fancy drug treatments we deploy. So please think about your health products, think about how you dispose of your needles, and buy yourself a guillotine. The WHO say you have to reduce the incidence by 80%. Now, that's okay, so long as you know where you're starting from. And for most countries, we don't have a starting figure. So for me, this is not an achievable goal because we don't know where we're starting from. So to help us, the WHO have given us some absolute figures. And I think that's very helpful. I think it's useful to have some hard numbers. But how are you going to measure them? Meeting the targets is going to be hard. Showing you've met them is going to be harder still. We could spend as much money measuring the impact as we can on reaching the targets. And the biggest target we have is to reduce incidence. Reducing new infections is going to be key to proving you've eliminated hepatitis C. If you're not seeing new infections, you know you've got it under control. But that is really, really hard. The WHO are very clear. They want a test-retest approach. They want you to go out, test people, show they're negative, go back a year later and test them again. This is a big country with an awful lot of people. I can tell you in England, the reason I've left England is because we're undergoing our first test-retest approach in drug services. It's an absolute nightmare. It is really hard to do. Getting people to come back, bribing them, persuading them to come back is really, really hard. And it's expensive. But it's doable. It can be done because the Egyptians have done it. Now this is a fabulous study from Egypt. And Egypt is really the world leader in hepatitis C elimination. And they have shown that you can go out there, find people who tested negative and retest them. But this is a huge study in 9 different villages, tens of thousands of people, and it costs. So I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to repeatedly show that we have met the WHO targets. And I think we need to start talking to the WHO about a more realistic proposal that isn't testing 20,000 people every year, ad infinitum. Because none of us, I'm afraid, are doing terribly well when you look at the WHO targets. This is Homi Rezavi's assessment, and Homi's done a fantastic job evaluating progress towards elimination around the world, and you can see here in green that very few countries are on track. I'm not sure that elimination, according to the WHO metrics, is possible, and I'm not sure we could measure it even if it was. So I suspect we're setting ourselves up to fail. But this is not failure, because there are enormous benefits to trying to eliminate hepatitis C, even if you don't get to the magical 80% reduction. Is it worth pushing for it? Is it worth starting? There's other things to spend your healthcare dollars on. Well, here's why it's worth it. This is what's happened in England. After 3 years of a hepatitis C elimination program, we're nowhere near eliminating in England. We've got another 4 or 5 years to go. But within 3 years of starting to try and eliminate hepatitis C, we saw this massive fall in liver cancers, a massive fall in people dying of advanced liver disease. And for the first time in my lifetime, we've seen a reduction in waiting times for liver transplants. We haven't achieved anything according to the WHO, but we've saved thousands of lives, and we haven't really got going. So there are enormous benefits to a hepatitis C elimination program, even if it doesn't tick the WHO box. And mortality in England is still falling. We're still seeing fewer people dying, even though we haven't begun to hit the WHO targets. And another hidden advantage of hepatitis C elimination is this, is a disease of disadvantage. This is a disease of the poor. This is a disease of people who don't access healthcare. And in London, you can see that most of the treatments we've given were to the most deprived people in our population. So what we're doing is stopping people dying, and we're getting out to the people who don't normally get access to healthcare. Never mind whether I hit a WHO target, there's an awful lot of people living much better lives because we're trying to eliminate. You can't fail to eliminate when you're curing and helping poor people. So elimination of hepatitis C, once you start trying, you start to stop people dying, you start to engage the disadvantaged in society, and you bring in other health benefits. And again, the Egyptians have shown us what can be done. They're not just screening for hep C, they're doing a bit of diabetes testing, a bit of hypertension testing. They're producing global health benefits to a population that's poorly served. I don't care whether they get a little badge from the WHO, they're helping people live better lives. So it's a huge thing to start. It carries huge advantages to society. And in Pakistan, the costs and benefits of this, I suspect, will be enormous. You've already heard from Assad what a massive impact this is having on Pakistan society. Even if you don't hit all the targets, the benefits will be colossal. And you, I'm afraid, have more challenges than most. You have the tiger virus, you have the genotype 3, I'm afraid, the least responsive to treatment, the most challenging to treat. Even with our best drugs, even with Sofvel, you can see the SVR rates, particularly in cirrhosis, are not quite as good as we think they should be. This, of course, is the GLE-PIB trial. They were very clever. They took genotype 3 out because you can cure 99% of most genotypes, but only 95% of genotype 3. And when we're talking about 10 million people, a 5% failure is a lot of people. And there are some Rottweilers out there. There are some even more dangerous strains. Genotype 3b is particularly challenging. In fact, EASL recommends you use triple therapy, a very expensive regimen to treat genotype 3b. And I bet most of you, like me, are not subtyping your genotype 3s. With the best drugs for genotype 3, we can cure most people. But of course, the best drugs are expensive. And the cheaper drug, which is soft DAC, is even more challenging, particularly for people with cirrhosis. Because when you have cirrhosis with soft DAC, your SVR rates in the trials are quite disappointing. In the randomized control trials, soft DAC doesn't look like a great choice. But of course, what we're doing here in Pakistan is using 24 weeks, adding ribavirin, pushing the response rates up, and we know from studies in India that that's likely to be highly efficient. So this is a population study in India. You can see the numbers are huge, and you can see the SVR rates are very significant, well over 90%, even in the cirrhotics. With one little caveat here, a lot of these patients didn't come back for follow-up. The drugs don't work if people don't take them. So compliance is going to be really important. We need to know whether what they've seen in India also applies in Pakistan. We really need to know how good soft DAC is in Pakistan. We need to know if curing 90% is good enough. Is leaving 1 in 10 people not cured going to allow the virus to disappear? Or is it going to come back, reinfection with soft DAC resistant virus? We need to know, because we need to change approach if it doesn't going to work. And the final point I want to stress is the efficacy of treatment is determined by whether you take the tablets. They're good pills, but they don't work on the shelf. We have to persuade people to take the medication. And this is a little trick we used in England. We used peers, people with lived experience of hepatitis C, encouraging people to get tested, encouraging them to take the tablets. And these people increase response by 12%. 12% more people take their tablets if they have a friend persuading them to take it. So think about your clinics. Can you get some champions who will help other people, persuade them to take the medication, and increase your response rates? Maybe in those cirrhotic patients where 24 weeks of regular tablet taking is so important. We know we can do this in Pakistan. Asad Chowdhury has done some splendid work in Gujranwala showing how you can treat large numbers of people. Saeed in Kashmir down in the south has shown exactly the same in Malaya. Huma Qureshi has a huge treatment program, including treatment studies in Islamabad. So we know we go out there and treat people, we can get a lot of people, and we can get rid of the virus. But please don't forget that even when you clear the virus, a proportion of people will go on to get liver cancer, and the proportion, I'm afraid, is higher in the genotype 3s. So your patients, your diabetic genotype 3 cirrhotics, are, I'm afraid, at very high risk of liver cancer. And my final bullet point's really important. We need to tell the politicians we will see more cancers, because you only die once. If you don't die of decompensated cirrhosis, you will live long enough to get cancer. And we can see that in the English program, a little rise in liver cancer. Now, if I ask you, do you want to die at 50 of decompensated cirrhosis or die at 60 of liver cancer, I think I'd know what you'd want. So it's not a bad thing that we're seeing this rise in liver cancer. It's a sign of our success. But we need to understand that we will have a cancer problem that will be a hangover from hepatitis C. We need to prevent reinfection. When you're treating your patients, we need to advise them on how to stay safe and avoid reinfection. So in summary, elimination is really, really hard. We know about the viral challenges, but curing a virus in a compliant patient in a clinical trial is very different from curing a country like Pakistan. Pakistan has made huge strides in diagnosing and treating hepatitis C, and those huge strides will bear enormous fruit in the future. Even if you fail to eliminate, even if it doesn't work, you will cure millions of people, you will save thousands of lives, and you will do an enormous amount of good. So I think we need to re-educate ourselves and think that it's not about the numbers from the WHO, it's about what we can do for our population, what we can do for our people, about what elimination needs to do. I talked a little bit about some of the questions that we have, and we have now a study that looks to answer those questions. It's a collaborative study with colleagues and partners from Pakistan, and Naheed Chowdhury, who is my right-hand woman, who is running the trial, and is the senior operating officer who's managing this huge clinical program, is going to tell you what we're up to. Naheed, please.